Black is beautiful, I know. Black is wonderful, no doubt. Black is powerful, at the same time, the There we go. Black is beautiful, I know. Black is wonderful, no doubt. Black is powerful, at the same time, the There we go. Mama, oh mama, oh mama Africa. Okay, so we have Mama Africa of the day, which is Nadia Baboo. Welcome to another special episode of Craft on Zoom. Nadia, how are you? Woohoo! So, happy International Women's Day to you. And I just wanted to say, I specifically took out my fur today for you. And my little little bling around my neck and everything. So I noticed that you have on yours too.
Every day.
It's amazing how you can pull that out every day. I look at some of your videos and I'm like, she's really like committed to this fur. But it's good. You're good. You're good. I love it. You inspire me.
That's the one thing I miss in the summertime. That's the only thing I miss in the summertime is my fur.
Well, you know what? Who says I put out Sweet Love in the summer, and I sat there and posed with my fur, taking pictures right on my porch with my daughter. It was a pandemic, so we posed, and my cover of Sweet Love. It's like June, and it's the end of May, and I'm there posing in this same fur. So yeah, so it's never. It doesn't matter what time of the year. Fur is every time of the year. That's a vest, so you can wear that in the summer. I'll give you permission. Anyways, let's get serious now. So International Women's Day, what does that mean to you as a Black woman?
Oh my goodness. I think it means so much more. It's actually grown to mean so much more, especially over the last year and a half or so, whatever we're in now, of being locked down, because I think everyone has come together more so internationally because we're all locked down, we're all on video. So it's bringing us together. I've been connecting so much with more Black women all over the world in the last year, whereas only in the before that was connecting more with people in my own community, like locally. But it's been amazing, the connection from Black women all over. I've been connecting with people in Europe, in Africa, even a couple down in Australia. And it's interesting. It's interesting to hear all of their stories, their experiences, and just sharing all of that, how it is to be a Black woman in different parts of the world. So that's what it really means a lot to me more this year, because I've had that experience of meeting more Black women internationally.
So, so I don't know if you heard that. My Bluetooth kind of did something funny, so excuse me if you heard that. Power off. Power's on, okay? Anyways, so I also wanted to ask you, what are the common themes that you think as Black women that we can all identify with in our experiences, growing up as a Black child and a Black girl and as a Black woman, that you've seen in speaking to other women that we have in common?
Well, I think depending on where we live, but I know, especially here in North America, here in Toronto, growing up, there wasn't a lot of people around who looked like me growing up. And, I'm in my 50s. So I was one of a handful of we were one of a handful of Black families in our high school in the area that we lived in. And I think it was just a matter of that common experience is not seeing as many people like ourselves out there in our own neighborhoods, in media, and it was, you sort of had that sense of not being able to connect with yourself in a way. You know what I mean? It was just your family that you knew, a couple of people sprinkled here and there, but you didn't really have that sense of connection with. I personally didn't have that sense of connection with too many other Black women, outside the women in my family.
Yeah. And I think, do you think that's a suburban thing? Because we both grew up in the suburbs. I mean, I grew up in
Oh, yeah.
Halton, you grew up in Peel, right? And
Yes.
because when I speak to people who grew up in Toronto or Scarborough, different areas of the Toronto area, they don't have some of the same experiences. Um,
Mm.
so do you think that's just something that's limited to our area, or yeah.
Probably. It probably is a suburban thing because, think about like when we were growing up. Now I think it's different in the suburbs.
Hmm.
I know for my kids, even when my kids were growing up, they're big now, but there was definitely more diversity coming into the
Yeah.
communities, the
Hmm.
suburbs, and it's and that's just going to continue,
Hmm.
right? Generations go through, but back when we were growing up, no, there wasn't that diversity, and
Yeah.
came up. I definitely came up against a lot of racism in our school,
Hmm.
and I also found that I just wasn't, even when I was amongst the Black community, and I'd go into areas that were predominantly Black, or go to see friends in my old neighborhood.
Yeah. Hmm.
This almost felt like I had lost touch. Do you
Where
know what I
did
mean?
you, okay, so where did you live before you came to Peel?
Well, I was always in Mississauga, but there was a
Okay.
certain of Mississauga that
Hmm.
was more diverse and predominantly a Black, more of a multicultural community.
Okay.
So yes, so in the Credit Woodlands area,
Okay.
and definitely, and that's where I was up until middle school.
Hmm.
And then in high school, we moved on up, like the Jeffersons, and we got into more of an upper middle class area, and
Hmm.
again, predominantly white high school,
Yeah.
and it completely changed. And of course, during high school, those are really formative years, and you're trying to fit in, and
Hmm.
you're trying to you're finding yourself, and
Hmm.
I couldn't
Hmm.
find myself at that school, and I really started to. Um, I didn't interact with people too much. I didn't socialize with people too much. I was more of a drama geek. I went to the drama club, welcomed everybody, right?
Yeah.
Sort of
Music
all the
and drama.
outcasts could
That's,
come
yeah.
to
Music,
drama,
art, and drama classes. Yeah. That's where we
right?
found our.
So all the outcasts could come to drama, and people.
I was not an outcast. Hello. I know what you mean. I'm joking, but yeah, technically, we were different. Hmm.
Different. I was different, and people didn't know how to relate to me, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how to relate to them. And but I made it through. And I actually didn't find. We were talking about this a little bit, you and I, a little bit off camera a little while ago, but connecting with Black women.
Hmm.
Connecting Black women was a challenge for me. Yeah, even I only started to really develop good relationships, good strong friendships with Black women in my adult years, and
Hmm.
not well into maybe my 30s did I start to really develop those relationships.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that goes back to maybe how we were. So your mom, let's go back. Your parents moved you to these different areas. Did your mom go through any racism and sort of pass on some of her experiences to you in a way that shaped the way how you view relationships with other women? Like wondering, just did your mom ever mention anything about her job, like or her friend circles that kind of
Well,
make you think?
not my mom. My mom always, like typical moms, try to protect us, and
Yeah.
let us know about all the hard, the evils in the world.
Yeah.
But my mom, though, was a little different from my mom, because my mom stopped working a few years after we got here
Hmm.
to Canada, because she's disabled. She was disabled.
Hmm.
Just couldn't. She was a registered nurse. She was a nurse.
Oh, good.
So after she had rheumatoid arthritis. Just worsened and worsened. It got
Hmm.
quite severe, and eventually just was wheelchair bound and couldn't work.
Hmm.
So she was confined to the home, and so her social circles were always her old social circles. So her friends that she's always had from South Africa,
Hmm.
and a few new ones here in Canada, but they were always. She always seemed to find when we got here people within the South African community to connect with anyway.
Okay.
So it was a little different for her, but definitely we experienced that race. And my dad was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And just even him starting to build his practice, you know what I mean? Just he went into private practice, and even seeing him struggle at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people wouldn't go to him because they didn't believe in his abilities and his expertise. They didn't think his credentials, even though he, when you come here to Canada, you have to, go through the whole process again.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
he was a very qualified doctor, went on to specialize in 2 different areas.
Right.
But people still, for the longest time, questioned how good a doctor he really
Right.
was. He
Right.
wasn't, and because, he was a man of color, and how could you possibly know better than that
Yeah.
doctor?
Well, I come from, my mom was an RN as well.
Mhm.
And, I remember like, just like you said, the acculturation process was one thing in our community, but her experience at work, overall, it was good, but there were some times, like she was a what they call a charge nurse at one point,
Mhm.
and she said that there was some people that they refused to work under her when they found
Mhm.
out that she was, and before that she had worked with another lady who was also a black RN who was her supervisor, and that lady had moved to Scarborough, ironically, and then she got her house spray painted in Scarborough
Oh,
saying the N word, whatever. So even though, like, now that I'm thinking about it, even though we all have different stories when we come here, listening to what our parents were going through and then our own stuff, that we were going through in the
mhm.
schoolyard, it sort of
Mhm.
somehow seeped into the way how we perceive the world and our
Yeah.
level of trust in people in general, right? So
Yes.
that could be why, for me, I'm just psychoanalyzing this. Maybe, as us growing up in one areas where we were the first black, the first this, the first that, whatever, our parents were trying to figure it out. And then now it took us all these years to now be like, I'm okay. Like, I don't need to worry about anybody liking me or, what they think about me. Just, I'm going to be me and put on my fur, whatever, my blonde hair, my
Right.
red hair, whatever I want to do.
That's
Right.
right.
And just be me. So, I think these maybe the commonality a lot of us have are first generation black children's stories in Canada. Right? Let's be specific. We're talking about
Yes.
Canada right now. We don't know of anybody else at this moment,
No.
but I think the stories that I'm finding that I'm hearing from other black women are, that grew up in the suburbs are similar. So
Yes.
I'm glad that, we've come through that. What do you think what advice we can give to the next generation? Like, we have daughters, both of us have daughters, to help them, because there's still things have changed, but there's still a lot of things that are still the same in the suburban areas. I would prefer raising my children in a suburban area. I would never say it's nothing, I wouldn't
Mhm.
advise somebody to do,
Mhm. Mhm.
because the city life is a whole different ballgame.
Oh, yeah.
And not that anybody can't do it. It's just when you're comfortable with one environment, it's hard to go somewhere else. But for me, raising my kids in the suburbs, the only challenge that I found is that, yes, the same things that I was going through, only black child, or one of few, couple of racism comments here and there. How would you, if you go back to your younger self, and talk to Nadia at, let's say, 12, 13 years old, which is the age of my youngest daughter right now, what would you tell her?
Oh my goodness. I would, I tell her that there is so much more beyond this community.
Mhm.
So don't let, you're here, you don't let this, um, oh my goodness, what's the word? Don't let this determine, who you're going to be or who's going to come into your world.
Mhm.
And don't let this diminish your sense of self. Be
Mhm.
proud of who you are. Because I think I found, when we switched into that white neighborhood, for
Mhm.
lack of a better term, right?
Mhm.
I I lost my sense of who I was,
Yeah.
culturally, because I wanted to fit in, right? So
Yeah.
you start. You want to fit in, right? Because that's what high school's all about, right?
It's
We
not
have to
even
work.
just, it's elementary school, it's high school. Like, let
Yeah,
me tell you. Like,
right.
yeah.
So in elementary school, I was cool because I was around people with me. But then I got put into this, and I think I tell myself when I, like, don't stop being yourself. Don't stop being yourself and trying to change yourself
Yeah.
because you want to fit into someone else's culture. Because they're not doing that for you,
Yeah.
right? They're not trying to do that for you, and they, so don't try and do it for them. And you are, you have something to teach them. You have something to teach them about, about being open to other cultures, about learning to respect everybody and appreciate everyone for what they bring to the table. So just don't start to stifle yourself and don't become someone else. Just continue to be you and be proud of who you are and where you came from. And and it's hard, and I know it's hard for a 12-year-old or anyone to when you're in the crux of it, but because I lost myself for a long time. I lost myself for a long time. And then even when I went transition back and I started to be, you leave high school and then you start to be, get out back into the real world and to be around, more women of color. And then all of a sudden I felt, like I said, wait a minute, I don't feel like I belong here either.
You have to start all over again in the world of work. Yeah.
Yeah. And where do I fit in? And I really struggled through a lot of my life with where do I fit in?
What's funny? Like, I'm thinking about this, and we're talking about our experience as Black women, but there are some people who grew up in Canada but grew up in predominantly Black areas, and they're not Black, and they adopt our traits. Like, there's a lot of Black girls that you would swear you're talking to a Jamaican or or Caribbean person. And I don't know, like, so I think we all as women do that to a certain degree. We try to fit into an environment, um, good or bad, however it ends up for us, right? But what is that about, that we can't just be ourselves? Like, why do we always feel like we have to try? When you're working in a corporate world, a lot of women, remember that decade where, as an image consultant, yesterday, remember women dressing up like men, wearing suits and power suit for the women and all this nonsense. And it was like, you could, I remember going to interviews with employment agencies and wearing pants. And the recruiter told me, when you go to interviews, it's better if you wear skirts. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with, and then now almost every interview I've gone to that I've gotten, I wore pants on purpose because I want to prove to her that you don't need to wear a skirt to get a good job. And I got some good jobs. So it's funny, the things that, if you listen to other people, sometimes it will just have you like a chicken with your head cut off. And then if you follow your own instincts, somebody's telling you shouldn't be that. You shouldn't do that. Right. So it's just, I think women, we just need to figure it out on our own without listening to so many of the noise of society and following all the different things that are in the media. So that's just off topic. But so I want to ask you, as an image consultant, I know you've been working on some different projects. Now that, all the dust has been settling, with the reality of, Black History Month is done, and the last year is kind of becoming a little bit of a distant memory of all the activism. What do you plan on doing for yourself going forward to continue some of the momentum, the Black Power movement of the 21st century? What do you plan on? How do you incorporate that into your image consulting business?
Well, I am planning on doing more collaborative work with women within the community. And I've been finding that it's
Black women specifically. If you
Black
want to,
women.
yeah.
Yes. And I've just been finding when I put that intention out there, especially, like I said, it comes from meeting so many people. And when I put that intention out there, those people have been coming back to me saying, yes, let's work together. Yes, let's work together. So women within the Black community are also approaching me. I've been approaching them and they've been approaching me. And it's so wonderful to see. And it's so wonderful to experience, because I've never worked like this. This is the first time that I'm really working in my whole career with so many women of color, so many Black women in one space, and it's amazing. And I also, and to tell you the truth, when I was hesitant to reach out because, because I did experience colorism, very early on in my life. And I thought, I didn't want to reach out because I thought maybe they won't want me to be a part of it. Because I've been in situations, even in my adult life, when I remember when I was first, I won't mention the name of the organization. I went to a newly formed, Black organization. Okay. And it was, I can't remember but it was supposed to be a Black, but women of color, like color, okay, people of color organization. And I sat in on the first meeting, and I mean, my background is more mixed. I mean, I'm African, there's some Indian, there's a little bit of Asian influence way in the background. But, I come from South Africa, from Zulu Nation, you know what I mean? That's and I went to this meeting, and from what I was hearing, it was all about just, true Black people. It was very subtle, but it was like, we don't want any mixed people in here. And I was listening to this. It was very subtle in the way they say it. I can't remember exactly how it was said, but the organizer at the end then, said to me, so what did you think? Are you going to be joining us? And I said, you know what? Based on that presentation, no. And she said, why not? I said, because I quoted back to her what was said. Yeah. And I said, that tells me you don't want me here. That maybe I'm not Black enough for you. Space, yeah. And she said, no, that's not what we need to know. And I said, well, I think you better, listen to your again. Yeah. Because that's what my impression was. So what you told me was that I'm basically not Black enough to be part of your organization. So I wish you well with it, but I'm stepping.
That's a very good story, because I've had several friends over the years of mixed race, and some of the stories of this colorism have come up. So here we are all becoming friends because we're one of few Black people in the community, but then there's a whole separate set of racism that they deal with because their father is white or their mother is white, or or they're lighter skin. And I think as Black women, we need to be conscious of that, right? Because a lot of us, we feel, especially with the last few months, people talking all these things about Black power and Black empowerment and the stories that Black people go through in the struggle. And some people are being out and out mean to fair skinned women. Like, I've seen it on the internet. I've heard it, just within conversation of different people. And I'm thinking, like, but we're all still considered Black, right? So at the end of the day, whether you're fair skin, you're more a little bit on the grayer side of Black like me. I'm not black, but I am darker skin than you. And then there's people who are really dark, and we're all going through it in different levels. And I think if we acknowledge that a lot of people don't consider, even within our own community, that, we're Black enough or whatever, then that's kind of putting another divide within the systemic racism that's already existing in the whole general society. And I think that I'm glad that you said that. I'm really glad you said that, because why do you think that is? Like, where do you think that came from? That feeling that you're not Black enough just because?
It's because of my feeling of not being Black enough was just because I think, even though how can I say this? It was strange. It was such a strange thing to hear, because here I am from South Africa. I come from the motherland. You know what I mean? I was born there. My family is there. And I never used it as something to, signify my Blackness. You know what I mean? Like, I just thought, look at me. You know what I mean? Look at me, and we are all in this together, and we should all appreciate that to some form. We're all going to go through the same thing. But I just felt like, oh, where did it come from? That just because maybe is systemic, you know what I mean? Like, just going back, that I guess way back in the day, I would be seen as one of those people who could pass, maybe. Do
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I will get more privileges. People would
Yeah.
think that I will get more privileges because of the color of my skin. And because I am lighter, I would probably get more different, be up for more opportunities than they would. And maybe I
Mm-hmm.
might.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm used, it's not they would put it back on me and
Yes.
hold it against me. But I'm not the one who's perpetuating that. Do you know
Right.
what I mean? I myself, when I would go for job interviews, there was countless times I would go for interviews
Mm-hmm.
and that I would get turned down, and I knew why it was. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew as well, because much of my career was in the beauty industry,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and at the time in the 80s, and
Yeah.
it was coming up, and there weren't a whole lot of women of Black women or women of color in
Yep.
period, any kind of shades happening in that industry. And even though the industry was starting to say, oh, we're gonna extend our color lines, and all that was starting to happen in the 80s, there was still nobody within the companies representing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still even hard, for me to, to move up the ranks in that industry
Mm-hmm.
because of the color of my skin. And I knew that's what it was.
Yep.
I knew that's what it was. It wasn't, it wasn't obvious. They were careful, but you knew. And so it's not that I never experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I definitely did. But I don't know. It just, I know I don't
And it
experience
hasn't
things.
changed. This is the thing.
No.
It hasn't changed. People are still doing it. So I think the takeaway from this is that, you know, the revolution that started happening of the uprising of Black empowerment again, people have to be mindful that in your quest to prove so much that you're the blackest of Black, you know, don't exclude other shades of Black and brown or whatever, because at the end of the day, it's people are people. We're looking at it as a humanitarian thing, not just a Black thing. The change that
Yeah.
we're trying to instill it has to do obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement, but it also has to do with just humanity, like how, you know, we interact with each other, how we treat each other, how we look at each other when we approach life, you know, and what we're showing the world. If we're showing the world that within our own community we don't even respect each other just because we're lighter skin or darker skin or whatever that colorism issue is.
Mhm.
It keeps happening. That's why the outside people who think they're supreme, I'm not going to mention, but you know, they're going to keep looking at us like, yeah, you're the inferior race. So, you know, it is something that I think that we got to be mindful of. And that's the end of my lecture on that. But I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you mentioned it, because it's something that I always wondered about, and I within my own pocket of friends or my even with
Mhm.
my people that I know, I do bring it up if I hear somebody
Mhm.
saying something even remotely like, oh, light skin and da 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 da. I said I was gonna stop talking about this because even sometimes I think
Okay.
there are men that think because they're light skin that
Mhm.
they're the gal dem sugar as
Yeah.
Beanie Man would say, and they can get away with anything and they're narcissists and but then there's some that aren't like that. But it's just we just all got to be mindful that we're all the same. It doesn't matter what our complexions are. You got to treat people the way how your mom raised you. I'm sure your mom didn't raise me like that, but some people
I
they
know.
just try to fit in and they change their ways of thinking. So, anyways, I'm gonna wrap this up, but I wanted to tell you that I'm so glad that we are communicating and staying in touch. I'm looking forward to doing some more with you within the next year. Things are opening up again.
Yeah.
So I hope that we can actually get together and do a little project together in future.
That would be wonderful. I would love that.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I like the fact that we kind of have the same way of thinking, but you inspire me to be a little bit more out, like putting down the wall a little bit, because as you said, like there's things that you put up you don't realize because you're
Yeah.
living within a society or community that you feel like I can't be too much, I can't be too this, but it's okay to be yourself. So you're
Yes.
kind of my my go-to girl when it comes to I want to feel like a little dose of, is it okay to be Vanda Li, or is it okay to be Carlene,
Yeah.
is it okay to be Queen Bling, whatever, yes, I can be all of that.
That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. because the world wants you. The world is waiting for you. They're waiting for
Yeah.
all, right? People are out there. Your fans are out there, and they want all of you. And it would be doing them a disservice if you didn't give them that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a nice ride, The resurgence of Vanda Li in this last year
Mhm.
has been a kind of an interesting journey. So I'm looking forward to this spring and when I start recording again and see what happens. I'm a summer singer. I don't do singing in the winter. When they ask me, I don't sing in the winter. Sorry, I'm opening my throat in the cold air. Like no, but yeah. So how are you? Oh, I want to ask you the
Yes.
dry Feb challenge. How did that work out for you and your husband? Are you drinking wine again? I expected to see you with a glass of wine as well.
No, you know what? It went really well. It was no
Mm,
problem. I didn't even miss it. It was I had a drink. It was like a beer cooler, one of those beer coolers, like beer
yes,
cooler, on Saturday night. That was the first time I had one. I didn't even jump right into it as soon as February was over.
right.
And the only reason I had something was my husband's eldest daughter came over for dinner, and we were so I just thought, oh, let's all have it. We all had a drink.
Yeah, yeah.
The only reason that I had one and haven't had another one since.
Wow.
Don't miss it at all.
Yeah, I
Don't
don't.
miss it
I
at all.
never liked beer, but wine maybe a little bit of champagne or mixed drinks. But I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't know you drink beer too. Wow, look at
No,
you.
I don't. I
Boss.
don't. I just came into
Really?
this, not a beer. It's like what kind
A
of,
shandy
like,
type of thing or
it's
something.
like, yeah, it's like a light cooler kind of
Yeah,
thing, but get
yeah.
it at the beer store. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it almost reminds me of Smirnoff Ice. It has that kind of
Yeah,
weight.
busy. Yeah. Hmm.
Yes. So that's the only thing that I would
Okay.
like. I'm definitely not a beer drinker. No, I like my own wine.
Okay. All right. So, what are your plans for the rest of this International Women's Day? Are you going to be dancing? Are you going to go on doing any
Dance.
lives, anything like that? Yeah, dancing and
I'm going to be tuning into a couple of other, another a collaborator, someone else who I'm doing some work with in the future. I'm tuning into her live later on this evening. But I am going to, and I'm going to be, I think I want to get in on Clubhouse. I want to listen in to some conversations. I'm going to be very active on social media and see what people are talking about.
Hmm.
So that's what I'd like to do today.
Okay.
Outside of when I get some other things done. And that's about it. And make sure I get my workout in. Gotta get my work.
Yeah.
That's it.
That too. All right. So it's been a pleasure as always, and we'll keep in touch. Talk to
Yes.
you soon. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.